If there is only one thing you need to learn and understand about Magna Carta 1215, it's this. Magna Carta 1215 is the sole peaceful means known to humankind by which the rights of the weakest, most innocent citizens can prevail over a massive, potentially corrupt, and oppressive state power. This is the voice of freedom, Magna Carta 1215 Learning Centre. Welcome to your next lesson with hosts Fitzroy and Carl.
Hi, welcome to the show. Glad to have you along once again. It's lesson number 7, Magna Carta Learning Centre, and tonight, do we have a doozy for you? Joining me once again, as always on a Monday night, is Fitz. Now, Fitz, unfortunately, because of the connection issues I've been having recently, we've decided not to run the show live tonight. We've pre-recorded, but you're in the chat room, so life's good. People can still ask you questions and still get answers. Just because I've been getting so hammered at 7:30 at night recently that my connection drops out, thought we would just try and see if we could get one show together. We didn't have all that bloody dropouts, eh? And see how we go. So thanks for doing this with me, Fitz.
It's a pleasure. I'm actually enjoying the change. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all comes together. And, yeah, it's the fact that if we can avoid any sort of breakdown in communication, that's the primary thing. So I'm all for it.
All right. All good. Well, we got a roaring show on tonight. In fact, I got 51 slides, of which we think we're going to get through about half. So this might be a two-parter, yeah?
Yeah, highly likely, because I don't want this to go on for too long, because the content is very heavy. It is going to require a fair bit of concentration. There's a lot of stuff that I'm willing to bet is going to be needed to be played over and over again, because a lot of this stuff is just going to be really, really intense and hard to grasp on your first go, because there's going to be so much of it. So I would recommend people, if they do watch this, to watch it over and over again and stop it to really understand this.
Now, there's a couple of things. It's probably more than a couple of things. There's a few things in this list that we're going to bring up tonight on the slides that some people may look at immediately and say, "What? You're bloody mad. What?" Can't be thinking. So the message there is stick with us, folks. And like Fitz said, you may have to go back and re-look at this video again once you get over the initial shock and the cognitive dissonance that you will suffer. Not everyone, but certainly some people will suffer a level of cognitive dissonance with what we're about to get into. So, Fitz, without further ado, should we get into it?
Yes, let's do it. Just make sure when you do watch this, guys, that you are ready to deal with the shock, right? Because it is going to be pretty hard to fathom the first time this comes across your path. So, yeah, hang on, guys. But I will tie it all up at the end, and I'll show you how it is all connected to 1215 Magna Carta. So it might seem like it's off topic to start with, but this is really, really critical knowledge, so you can see how it all connects at the end. So, yeah, let's do it.
So don't give up. At the end of part 1, there's part 2 where the answers will all become clear. So that's sort of where we're getting at it. All right, mate. Let's get into the first slide, and I'll bring that one up there.
So, did you want to read this one?
Sure. The victim of mind manipulation does not know that he is a victim. To him, the walls of his prison are invisible, and he believes himself to be free. That is an old quote, and I actually believe has been the basis of a number of movies that have been put out over the years, including some from Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, so Aldous Huxley was A Brave New World. I'm pretty sure that was the one that the book.
Oh, Brave New World. There you go. Yes.
And yeah, they always, when I say they, I know I've been asked, people have been saying that in the chat, like, who do you speak about when you say they? So I apologize for not being clear, because in my head I know who I'm talking about, but you guys don't. So when I say they, I mean the ones that live in the shadows, right? The ones who run the whole show, the dark, the deep state, whatever you want to call them. They're a very exclusive clique, and they have very specific knowledge that I'm going to want to share with you tonight, so you can see how they do it, and the secret messaging and stuff like that. And my guess is that Aldous Huxley, he was one of them, and he was, showing us, because that's the belief system, that they need to show us what they're doing. Otherwise, karma will come and get them. So I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's their belief system when When I say they, I mean your deep state people.
Well qualified.
Yeah, so this one looks like it's a bit big. It might have to be scrolled down on us because I think there's a bits missing on this one from my screen anyway.
Okay.
Is there a way to make that smaller? Because there's a bit missing at the bottom.
No, I don't think there is. That's
how missed that last bit.
Screen. I can't do much about it. Sorry. All right. So the role of knowledge. Since human beings as a species do not already have the things they say they want, it follows logically that the knowledge of the requirements to obtaining the things that they say they want either must be absent, or if present, that knowledge must be willfully being ignored. As long as this knowledge continues to remain unknown or ignored, the manifestation of the desired conditions will be impossible.
So this is pretty much at the heart why I put this first, what we're going to uncover. It's all the things we believed we've known, from what we can touch, smell, feel, taste, our senses, yet we've not even had a shred of real truth about what, the deep state cabal have known and kept from us. And this is that little bit of leap that is going to be required here. That's why I'm setting this up now, to really sort of go into that place where you can be open to just how much has been going on in front of you without you being even aware of it, and your willingness to accept it. That's going to be the big challenge. So that's why I'm putting that here, because if you don't really know all what's there, the ones that hide in the shadows, what they know, then you can't meet them on a level playing field. So this is about trying to level up that playing field now. This is what we're doing.
All right. Our next slide. The order givers. Oh, God. And here is the eclectic mix in person.
So when we talk about the deep state, right, like I thought, why not put a picture on it, right? That might help people, because your deep state is people you see, right? You just don't know it. They're also heads, of corporations. Like most of those are deep staters, like as you can see here, heads of religious orders. Classic politicians, we know that. The bankers, you can see that in the bottom right-hand corner. People in the military. There'll be obviously people in the police, right? So any institution, right? Sport, you pick it. Arts, like, obviously the media, that's pretty obvious. They're all there. And these are not like what we think, really shrewd and smart business people. No, they actually are dark occultists. That's what we don't understand. They're not these people who have this understanding about, like business as a separate entity. These are people who know how to mind manipulate.
Yeah. And do it with great ease.
Yes, because that's part of their cult, right? They know exactly what they need to do to get people to do as they want them to do, right? They know exactly what the conditions are that are required for others to follow them, as if they have some authority. They know exactly what they need to do that, right? So I just thought I'd put a picture up just to help people. When I say they, maybe that might help. So we can clarify that, and I don't need to constantly keep saying they or what they means.
The perfect dictatorship would have the appearance of a democracy, but would basically be a prison without walls, in which the prisoners would not even dream of escaping. It would essentially be a system of slavery, where through consumption and entertainment, the slaves would love their servitude.
I love that. I so love that one. When I saw that, I went, I can't go past this one. This one really nails it, right? Because in Rome, they used to call it bread and circuses.
That's right.
And nothing's changed. Like, it's no different. Because it worked back then. Why wouldn't it work now? Because people don't fundamentally change the way they operate. So there's nothing, all we do is we just get more sophisticated at it. But at the essence, it's the same structure. So that's why I wanted to put that one up, is just to show just how much has been hidden in the shadows that we don't actually see because we don't know where to look. And that's what we're going to hopefully uncover tonight. Some of it anyway.
Cult programming. God, you're really getting into it tonight, aren't you?
Well, we've done this last week. Tonight, I'm going to get a little bit more specific on the cult programming part. So I did want to go back over this. Before we go further, I just want to say that if I was to go into every single one of these 4 points here, right, that's going to be another show on its own, right? So I don't want to stretch that out. But what I have done is I've done the pre-recorded knowledge of those 4 points and more, and I've put it up on Soundbite University on the Facebook page. So
Right.
if you want to catch up on how it's actually done, the specifics of it, which is really critical that you understand what separation is and what happens when they separate you, right? That you understand the second part, right? What happens when they're getting you to conform, how that's done. Like it's all broken down. Same with the indoctrination and the trauma, what specific things. So this is all to do with military and police as a general rule, but it can be extrapolated out into the greater population as well. But they get the concentrated focus of this. That's why they're so effective at following orders. So that's why I wanted to put this slide up, just to be like a flag for where people can go, and if they want to look and really understand this part, because it is critical to know this bit too, that they can come to the Facebook group Soundbite University, and it'll start appearing. The first one's already up, and then there's another 4 set to come over the next 4 days.
Right. Okay. Let's get into the next one then.
Yeah. So this one, it's a bit of a mystery when you look at it, right? So you're just like, what does this mean? It's taken me a while to get my head around this. I'm still learning this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail because that's not that important for what we're doing here today. But if you remember last week, I did put up a slide where there was a blue and a red part of the brain and you can see the blue is for the feminine, and then you see it's got lunar. And then if you look at the first pillar in the middle, on the right-hand side, you can see there's what looks like a moon above that pillar.
Sure.
So that's connected to the feminine aspect of consciousness, or how that's signified or symbolized. And then you can see that triangle pointing downwards. That's the symbol of the female, because they have a womb, so they call that the chalice. Then the right-hand side, you see that's attributed to the solar, and then you look at the right-hand pillar, or left-hand pillar, sorry, and it's got the sun above it. And so it's a red triangle pointing upwards, which is a phallus, and that's signifying the sort of masculine side of the brain. Now, that checkerboard floor, which you see in all Freemason, iconography and stuff like that, what that means is that's base consciousness. That's like your just capacity to do, understand basic function. You know what I mean? Like it's the lowest form of consciousness. You can just, you know how to breathe and eat and chew. You know what I mean? You can just survive on your basic instincts. That's kind of what that checkerboard means. It means that you don't actually have a capacity to understand how to unify the two parts of that brain, like so they can have a synthesis. You're either jumping from one to the other. See how it's black and white? And we use the words black and white, right? Life isn't just black and white. We always say that. Well, that's what they're saying, is that you either jump from one side or the other. You're either in black or you're in white, right? You don't know how to merge the two and get into synthesis. So that's what that checkerboard sort of means, that you're a base level of function. And then you got those 3 pillars, and the left and the right one, they signify the 2 different parts of the mind, I guess, that if you want to make it simple, where you've got the feminine side, which is the credulous. If there's too much of that, you're too dominant on that right side, then you'll be credulous. You'll be a good slave, right? You'll just believe everything you're told, and you'll be quite naive. And then if you've got too hard, you're too much on the right side, on the left side, sorry, in the solar side, the masculine side. That means that you've got too much capacity for authoritarianism, like that real rigid, determination, and there's no balance in your action. So the blue side means care, to have care. And if you've got too much, right, then you're too easy to fool. And then the other side means will, or determination. If you've got too much, right, you're just going to be too hardcore authoritarian. And so then you see those 2 pillars that you've got on that checkerboard floor. You've got the sun, which is the left side, the moon is the right. So they're also 2 different types of light forms, right? So the moon is like a really dim, dull light form. So if you're on that side, means your light, like your heart intelligence is really low. And if you go to the sun, that's a really bright light form. And so if you can see there's a ladder, it's talking about the ladder can swing because there's a fulcrum, a center point, right in the center of that middle pillar. And that middle pillar is the all-seeing eye. So what that means in this iconography is that it means your capacity to merge with your knowledge of natural law and harmonize and synthesize with it, right? That's the aim. The aim is to be able to transcend those 2 polar ways of seeing life, you know what I mean? Being overly naive or overly authoritarian, and merging into the middle, and then going up that ladder, right? And swinging from the dark light source, which is the moon, this is a dim light, into the bright light source, right? So I'm not going to, there's a bunch of other stuff on there I don't want to get into today because it's going to take too long. But if you can just understand that this is about how to get off the floor and climb that ladder and ascend into our natural spiritual nature, our capacity to really understand how to harmonize ourselves with the natural world, and then how peace and harmonious prosperity can exist, right? And if you're down on that checkerboard floor, you've got no clues about that, right? And so what it's saying is, you would have heard that term, live the checkered past. You would have heard, that's a really common one.
Yes.
Well, this is where it emanates from. So if people ever wondering what that term means, it means that if you live a checkered past, you're always jumping from one extreme to another. You're just incapable of finding the balance, where you can live a harmonious life. You're living in extremes.
Dark, light and back again.
Yeah, so you're living in extremes, right? You just can't find that center balance. So that's all I really wanted to explain about that, as to why I put this here. And it's kind of going to make sense with the next one now. So the word green language, this is what the dark occult, so the picture I showed you earlier, this is what they do with language, and how they do wordplay with it, and how they make it mean things to them. That's what that is. So if you can see how they've got the word police, so you've got, when you split it up, it's pole and ice, right? And so pole ice. And so that center pillar that I spoke about, that's the one that we all need to climb up, right? But if that pole is full of ice, it's going to make it pretty hard to go up an icy pole. So what they're saying is the police's job is to make sure that you never get off the floor. Does that sort of make sense?
Yes.
That you never actually start climbing that knowledge ladder where you can ascend into your true spiritual nature. That's what that means, pole ice. And then if you look at it, it's pole eyes, right? So it means your eyes are split in two, right? They don't focus into one spot, right? There's a left side and a right side. So you're in that polarity.
Yeah.
Which you can see the word polarized, where that came from. So when you look at that from their perspective, how they see the words, you can understand why they choose these specific words for these functions. And so if you have a look at the picture of the police, right, look what they're all doing. Like they're all marching just like an army would.
So
how did that happen, right? That they got them to do that? Because these are all individuals with their own unique nature. So how do you get them to, morph into one unit? What's the purpose of that, right? Because if you're a constable, like we've discussed in the past, you would need to have really good knowledge of natural law. Well, someone who has really solid knowledge of natural law would never do this. They would never unify into this way and be like an army of marchers. That's like full programming to do that. This would never ever be established, that you need to be trained to be a robot. That's the antithesis of natural law. So that's why these guys are not constables, because they've squashed all that capacity that they have, their innate capacity to ascend into their spiritual nature. Yeah. They're down in that base consciousness, from jumping from one checkerboard to another, the black and the white, they're either left or right. So when they're taking orders, that's the right side of the brain. And then when they're out there enforcing it with authoritarianism, because that's what they do, they're in the left side of the brain. They're too dominant. They never merge, right? So they suppress their divine spiritual nature, and that's their job, is to make sure that yours is suppressed too.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty much their role. That's what that term actually means.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you want to read this one, Carl?
Sure. The light of the body is the eye. Therefore, when your eye is single, your whole body is full of light. But when your eye is dual, your body is full of darkness. Now,
this might surprise a few people. Now, I'm not a Bible reader, so when I heard this, I was like, wow, this actually comes from the Gospel of Luke. Don't ask me what part of the Bible that's in. This is just information that's come across my desk. Yet, the word Luke actually is luce, L-U-C, which in Latin means light. So a lot of people think this was actually, like a real man that had all this knowledge. It was a dark occultist who wrote this and put it in there. This is the part that's going to shock people, because they need to give you some clues, right? So they're telling you what's required for you to ascend into your spiritual nature. Because if you look at it, right, it says, when your eye is single, right? That's the pineal gland, right? So when you can generate all your attention into that space of spirituality, you know, your body is full of light. But when your eyes are dual, and that's what the police are, right? They're in that dual side. That's why they've got the red and the blue siren. You know what I mean? It's telling them they're switching from being a good order follower to being a good master, you know, where they're actually enacting those orders and they're being authoritarian. And they just switch from that. Just like they wear the blue uniform, right? So the blue uniform is that blue, right? That's the credulity, you know. So it's not an accident that they give them these colors, right? They're actually showing us. We just don't know how to read the symbols. So I'm hoping that that's going to help, right? So then when you go into that polarity, when you're split into those two forms, you know, where you're either too much on the right or too much on the left, that's when your body's dark, right? It can't make use of itself to actually serve the function it's come here to do. You know, when you're doing that, you're actually acting out of alignment with nature. You know, so that's what that actual part of gospel is trying to tell us. Not that I read that stuff, but luckily that came across my desk and I was able to put it to use for those who do read into that stuff. Maybe that gives a bit more clarity.
Absolutely.
So then you've got the next wordplay they've got, which is officer, right? So it's off, I, sir. And then if you go into that and you extend the sir into seer, it's off, I, seer. Someone whose eye, the one that we have, the one that's in the pineal gland, the one that allows us to see and go into the spiritual realm with our true divine nature, that's when that means that light is off. So these police, if you think about it, right, they are in that duality place where it's us and them, right? And their light is off, right? Their capacity to, you know, step into their divine nature has just been extinguished. It's not in function. And so that's what it says. Their divine spark within has been extinguished. The light's gone. So that's who they are. Now, if you look at what they're wearing in this picture, right? If you were really attached to your divine spark, would have you ever put that over your face? You know, like
no, you would not.
Think about that. That just shows you how controlled they are, right? They're showing you every single minute of the day how controlled they are. So yeah, I just thought that would be a really good one. The S, the W, and the B, just so if anyone's wondering what that says on those three pillars, what that stands for. S is for strength, B is for beauty, and W is for wisdom. So you can see how S, you know, strength, will, determination. Beauty, you know, that's that real care. When there's care, there's beauty, because that's what that's meant to represent. And wisdom is the combination of those two in a balanced form. That's how wisdom is born. So just to give a bit more depth to that.
Absolutely.
So did you want to read this one, Kat?
Nobody can put any obligation upon you to do whatever you feel is not morally right. Larkin Rose is amazing. Some of the quotes you've pulled from Larkin Rose, I've got to say, are spectacular.
Yeah, like I'm so pleased I've come across this guy. Like he's just a new addition in my repertoire that I'm like, wow, where were you all my life, right? So this is the question that police, I would love to have people ask them, because when they say I'm just doing my job, this is a question I'd love to have people ask the police this question. Is it possible that anyone can put an obligation on you that you don't feel is morally right? Is that possible? Because that's a question they will not answer. And it just shows you what they're willing to do and how far they're willing to go to step outside of their conscience.
Or a paycheck.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's the tragic part.
Yeah.
So this is just more depth. Like I have, if you've seen in the past, you've seen that I've put other stuff up about this particular badge logo, because this one features internationally. So, you know, when I started seeing a picture in other people's work, I'm going, clearly this one's just a doozy. So, you know, as you can see, in those protests that you would have seen all the horrific stuff happening by the Victoria Police, right? People couldn't get their heads around why they keep attacking them. And they kept saying, you serve us, because they don't understand the symbology of what's actually on their badge. They don't serve you.
Yeah.
If you have a look, right, it's got the two horns of the goat, right, at the very top. That's the duality, right? And what's it upholding? Because it says uphold the right. Well, what are those two horns at the top upholding? They're holding the corporate crown. So that's what they're upholding. They're upholding the right for the corporate crown, which is Rome, you know, to harvest and plunder you. That's their job.
And they do so with much vim and vigor in Victoria.
Yeah, because that's what they'll set out to do from the first day. They didn't even hide it.
Yeah.
And so that's the really, like, until people understand that, they're gonna keep yelling, "You serve us." They're not gonna have a clue.
Yeah.
So this is about really understanding that. Don't
no point. No, I don't think the people even feature in the oath that they have to take these days to graduate from the academy. So
yeah,
don't for a moment think.
Yeah, I've heard that. So can we just go back to that slide just so I can go back to the other points as well? Just so I can.
Beg your pardon?
So if you can see, it says left brain dominant. So that's will without care. That's determination without the capacity to care about what you're doing. That's what that means, right? And then you got the right brain, that's too dominant. That's just that blind belief, that naivety. I can't even say it, naivete. So they go from, like, I've established that earlier. They go from one side to the other, right? And then down the bottom, that's the spirit, right? That's because that's the true nature of the pentagram, is meant to be facing upwards, right? Well, it's stabbed into the ground, right? Into the dark earth, right? The base consciousness. So you've extinguished, the soul. It's like the divine flame is gone. So that's the destruction of the sacred essence of our creation. That's what that means when it's pointing down. That's in cult symbolism right there. We just don't know it. So this is about really being able to read what's there, guys. So when you go out in front of them, don't be saying you serve us, because you're just wasting your time and you're looking like a fool in front of them.
Yeah.
So they're just laughing at you. So it's not about that. So towards the end, hopefully we're going to get to the point, if we don't get to it in this show, of what you actually can say to them. So this part's the part that's really going to be, I reckon a lot of people are going to wonder what this means. So we'll see if we can help out here.
Right.
So this is occult numerology, right? This is what their numbers mean in their belief system. Not that they have to mean anything to yours, but if you don't know how they think, then you can't know what their symbology is and where they've planted it and how they use it, right? And this is how they communicate in their secret language. So you would hear a lot of stuff about revelations, the mark of the beast and all that. Like, I've been hearing about this for I don't know how many years now, the last 2 years. And most people don't understand what that truly means. They think it's some kind of being, and they don't understand that what it means, it's the actual carnal instinct of man in beast consciousness. That's all it means. When we're not actually able to unify our thoughts, actions, and emotions to act in the service of what we're seeking. And how many of us are really able to do that? It just doesn't happen often, because if it was, we wouldn't be in this disaster that we're in and been in for centuries, because we've not known how to do that. They know how to do it, and then they know how to use it against us. And through their symbology, right, they're showing us all the time, which we're going to get into soon. So you've got here 777. What that means is man in unity consciousness. That's when we are unifying our thoughts, actions, and emotions to act in the service of what we seek. So what is it that we seek? We seek peaceful, harmonious coexistence, right? And once that's happening, then your nervous system can relax enough for you to actually be able to ascend into that more spiritual capacity of yourself. But we need to have those conditions first. Well, most of us are living in beast mode because our nervous system's never relaxed enough. We're always on edge, or some version of hypervigilance. We're always suspecting someone's coming for us, or we can't trust people. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, you hear that all the time. That's because we operate out of that space. And then you got 888. 8 is the perfection, like the truth. It never changes. Like, you can destroy people, but you can't destroy the truth. That'll exist regardless of what happens, right? So that's what 888 is. Because if you have a look at 888, it's like the infinity symbol. It just never starts or stops. It's just constantly in flow. And so when we do the numeric reduction, because that's, I think it's called, some people call it gematria reduction. I don't even know if that's correct, but I've heard that called that. You're getting 6 to mean, what 6 means is there's no thought, there's no feeling, and there's no action. That's why you're incomplete in your actions. But when you do the addition of 6, 6, and 6, you get 18. And so how you do this is you keep adding numbers together until you get it to a single digit. So 18 turns into 1 plus 8, which equals 9, right? So 9 is the true number, which we'll get into in a second as to why 666 is just how you get to the number 9. But 9 is the true number of base consciousness, where you're totally ego dominant. You don't care. You don't have the factor of caring for others and yourself. Because if you can't care for others, you can't care for yourself, because our lives are interlinked. You know, if someone else's life is rubbish, well, my life's going to be rubbish, because that's the nature of natural law. So if you don't understand that principle, you're in base consciousness. And most people are at that space. They're all about what they can get for themselves. They don't understand that when they get what they want from themselves, they're taking from themselves at the same time. That's that beast mode. You know, that's what they're talking about when they say, you know, the mark of the beast. We've been marked for centuries. You know, this is not a new thing.
Yeah.
It's only how it's being used against us that's getting more and more intense. That's the difference. And so now people are starting to look into it where before they weren't, because they're too comfortable. Because remember, one of the first quotes that we put up was about man's comfort, right? And then when man's comfortable, he's happy to stay in his slavery. And that's what's been happening here. Like, you have a look at how Australia is known for its apathy, right? It's one of the biggest features. Yep. Everyone talks about how we're so relaxed. Well, that's euphemism for, you know, comfort, for beast mode.
True. True, you're right.
And so when you add up all the eights, obviously you get 24, and 2 plus 4 is 6, and that's the number for perfection. And what you'll see is when you get the 9, 6, and 3, anyone who's been following Nikola Tesla stuff, you'll always see he keeps saying the 3, 6, and the 9 are the keys to the universe, right? So isn't that funny how that all lines up, right? And so 7, 7, 7, if you're in 7, that means you're activated, right? So your thoughts are activated. You're unifying your thoughts, actions, and emotions, and then you've completed them, right? You've actually done that which you seek. That's in harmony with your natural environment. So everything is unified and complete. That's the true nature of what we're capable of. And that number is 3, because when you add 7s together, you get 21. Then you add 2 and 1 together, you get a 3. So that's what's called unity consciousness, because 3 is the 3 aspects of our consciousness. This is how the dark occultists do it, right? And when I say dark occultists, it's also light occultists as well. Light occultists are the ones who use the light for service of our common, you know, welfare, right?
Yep.
The dark occultists are the ones who use it for our enslavement. So there's 2 sides, just like there's a day and night. The knowledge is knowledge on its own. It's how it's appropriated. And the dark occultists appropriate it for control. The light occultists appropriate it for freedom. So I just hopefully is that clear enough what I've explained there about the numbers? Of what they mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Without getting too deeply into gematria, which you know I know a little bit about, but it's not enough to go talking about it in public. Put it that way.
So if we can move to the next slide, this is the Fraternal Order of Police. Now that's in America, but if you have a look, right, it's a pentagram facing upwards, right? But if you have a look at the letters F, O, and P, and the gematria to do with that, right? F is the 6th letter, O is the 15th, and P is the 16th. So when you add them up, right? So obviously F is just 6, O is 1 plus 5, which becomes 6, and P is 1 plus 6, which obviously makes 7. So if you have a look at what I've written here, I've got your thoughts are 6, right? So you don't care. Your emotions are 6, so you don't feel, but you're acting, right? So you are acting without thinking and feeling. So that's what they're saying the police are. They're these beasts who will act without thinking or feeling. And that's the Fraternal Order. And then you have a look, there's a checkerboard inside there, right? And above that, you see a castle. Well, that's a rigid, hard structure, a fortress, right? So they're showing you in their symbology, right? What this really means. And then you'll see there's a handshake in there. That's the Freemason. I think it's the first entry-level handshake that they do when they're initiating. And then obviously you've got the all-seeing eye. So even in their symbology, right, they're showing you who those people really are and what their purpose is. We just never known how to read it. And it says, like just fides liber, I can't even say the Latin one, justice, fidelity, and liberty, right? But for who? That's the question.
Yeah, for who?
It's always for who. So you see the number 9, that means beast consciousness, right? That's man in base consciousness. And the 3 is what the idea is that we ascend to. So the whole purpose of being alive in this body experience we have is to utilize what we can about what we're endowed with to get into that space where we are acting in unity with nature, right? That's the whole idea. And so the key number that the occultists use is 93. So what that is when the 9 base consciousness ascends into that space of unifying, into its true spiritual nature, and then you become the 3. So that 93 is a really important number, because we're going to get into that in a second. Now, the reason why number 9 is used as the beast number, the number of the beast, because it always, whatever attaches to it, you'll always end up with 9 at the end. So I've just done a little bit of a mathematical thing to show that. So when you do the number reduction, anytime you add a number to a 9, you'll always come back to the original number that you started with, that you added to the 9. So what that is, it's like coming back to itself. So that signifies, when it's just you coming back to yourself. So the ego always comes back to itself, right? It's always coming from a place of self only, like self-obsession. That's what that really means. So
you're going to need to explain that bit again for me, mate. I mean, I was never good with numbers. So looking at your screen at the moment, my eyes are like poker machine reels, just spinning up and down. So I can figure out that 9 plus 1 is 10 and that 9 plus 2 is 11. But beyond that, you just lost me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So the feature here is, can you see that at the end of it, see how it says 9 plus 1, and the answer at the other side is 1, and then 9 plus 2, the answer is 2, and 9 plus 3, the answer is 3. Can you see how when I do the addition, it always ends up the number's the same as the one that was added to the 9? So how it works is 9 plus 1
I see what you
mean. Is 1 and 0, and 1 and 0 equals 1.
Yep.
And 9 plus 2 equals 11. And then you get the 11's made just by the number itself, right? It's like 1 and a 1. So when you add a 1 and a 1, you get a 2. Because this is called number reduction. This is not actual the way we do maths, the way we were taught at school. This is a different way. This is using numbers to reduce down to 1. And so 9 and 3 makes 12, right? Yeah. And then 1 and 2 makes 3. And so when you added the 3 to the 9, when you reduced it, it came back to 3. Does that sort of make sense now?
Yes, it does.
So the same thing with the 4, it turns into 13. 1 and 3 is 4. And so you added a 4 to a 9. And when you did the number reduction, you came back to a 4. So what it's saying is it comes back to itself, right? So the number that was added to the 9 will always come back to itself. And that's what the ego does. The ego comes back to itself. Everything is driven from the self. So they're using numbers to signify aspects of us. And that's their code. And that's how they work out what numbers mean to them. And so then when you do the multiplication version, whatever you multiply 9 by will end up being a 9 answer. So multiplication changes what ends up being the final answer. So when it's addition, it's the number you're adding that ends up being the final answer when you do number reduction. When you're multiplying, the number that you've added to is irrelevant because it'll always end up being 9. So it's another way the ego finds a way to get back to itself. Does that make sense?
Yes,
so no
absolutely.
matter what you do, it'll find a way to come back to itself. So whatever you apply, it'll still care only about itself and itself only. So that's why they use the number 9 as the number of the beast, right? That's that real base consciousness. It's all about me. And so if you just see how 9 and 6 is a 54 and you add 5 and 4 together, you get a 9. So it just goes down that whole list. Does that make it a bit clearer?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
And so at the bottom, as you can see, 93, that means love, will, and ascension, right? So you need to have the love, right? The capacity to, want to care enough.
Yeah.
And then the drive to want to do something about it. And when you combine the love that you need to care enough, and then with the will, the determination to do something about it, when they marry together, that's the chemical wedding, or what some people call alchemy.
Yeah.
That's the brain now having that fusion through the chemical wedding and creating, because you're taking the left and the right brain parts, right? And you're balancing and meeting them in the middle. And then that's when you create that aspect of elevating up into the light. When you're ascending, people call that ascension. So anytime you act in a place of balance, you will always give birth to the light. That's kind of what that's saying. And so 93 is when man moves from beast to spiritual enlightenment. And that's our divine nature. So that's why 93 is the number. And so if we go to the next slide, hopefully this is going to really demonstrate why 911 is the number in America, and we use it here as well. So as we've established, 93 is love, will, and ascension, right? So that's the capacity to care enough to do that which your heart knows is in alignment to how to live in harmony with the natural world.
Yeah.
And so that's when we move into that space of enlightenment, our body's light, as well as our spirit. And so if you have a look at 911, right, you do the gematria on that, or the number reduction, the 9 stays as it is, and then you add the 1 and the 1, and you get a 2. So now you've got 92. And remember what the number for love, will, and ascension, it's 93. So you're not quite there. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Is you're not quite made it to 93. You've just fallen short. And then if you go 9 plus 2, so we do it like fractions. So the 92 over the 93, 9 plus 2 is 11. And then below that, 9 plus 3 is 12. And so when you add 1 and 1 together, you get 2. And when you add 1 and 2 together, you get 3. So are you following this part so far?
I am.
Cool. And what is 2/3? When you divide 3 into 2, what do you get?
0.666.
Repeating. And so this is like,
2/3.
yeah, so it's 0.66 forever, right? It never stops. So why they chose 911 is to show you that the people who require to call emergency services have some kind of disaster happening usually, right? Not always, but there's something that's self-inflicted. And so they're saying they lack the love and the will to behave in a way that's in alignment with their true divine nature. So they need to call who? The very people who are part of that whole problem. Yeah. So this is their mockery of us. They're laughing at us. Jeez. That's what that means. So September 11 was another version of that.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
That's why they did it. It's not an accident. Like, we need to understand what their symbology means. Like, they are laughing their heads off at where these dumbass beasts, right, who make so much chaos for ourselves that we've got to call their dog squad in, right? Their dogs, because that's what they call them. They call them their dogs. Yep. The police are their dogs, to try and do what? Are they really there to help us? We've just established what their real job is, right? So this self-fulfilling cycle of misery. And they're laughing at us for we stay in that space, right? So to them, we're like these dead zombies who have got no clues. We just carry on in this cycle, and they've been laughing at us this whole time. So this is the heavy stuff that the people are not going to really enjoy. But what other option do you have? Right?
Particularly if they're like me, who at the first sign of fractions have a conniption and go and get a cup of tea. And I've got to admit, this took me back with the cold grey hand of death reaching on me to my my early years doing fractions. And I've got to say, I've never been good at fractions. So people, if you're not being good at fractions, if you're not good at maths, just stick with this. Look over it again. Watch it again, because these numbers do bear out what Fitz is saying. And it's amazing that all this links together. Now, I can't speak to the gematria yet. I am trying to get a hold of a couple of guys who are very involved in gematria to do some coding for us, but they haven't come through yet. I'd love to hook you up with them, Fitz, when that comes through. It'd be a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So the reason why I'm putting this up is they do symbology in many ways. It's not just through their shapes and stuff. It's also through their numbers. So it's just about seeing where it is, right? And it's all in front of us. We just haven't understood their code, right? This is about uncovering their code. So then we can have a level playing field now, right? Because that's all they've been doing, is they've been making sure the playing field's not level. That's the whole game. Exactly. They've been tilting the table, and it's about how do we tilt it back so it's a level. It's not like we need to, tilt the table in our favor. So we just need to see how they play the game, right? And if we know how they play the game, we've got the capacity to actually prevail because we know what we're dealing with. And this is just about that, right? So if you have a look at, there's the inverted pentagram. What I wanted to show here is if you get an inverted pentagram and you trace the inside of it, you get a pentagram, the pentagon, right? So we've never understood, most of us, or me included, as to why they chose the pentagon as the shape for their central military command.
Yeah.
because it's the inverted pentagram. So their role was never to give to life. Their life was always to dominate and control life. And it's showing you in
Absolutely.
the symbology, right? And so the one on the right-hand side, that's the Masonic Women's Order, the Order of the Eastern Star. You know, so they've got the pentagram twisted in the other way, you know what I mean? And they've got all
Yes.
the symbology in there. So, you know, there's all these things. If we don't understand what their symbols mean, right, we won't know what they're really telling us. So obviously Victoria Police features heavily, as you can see, because this has come from an American guy, right?
Yeah, right.
Victoria Police features all the time in his stuff because it's so blatant. Once you can read the symbology. So yeah, I wanted to show, you know, the symbols that are out there every day that we don't look at properly. So this is the next part about the squares, right? So squares mean something in cult symbology. It means hard-edged control. And when you put two together, two squares are part of what makes a cube. And this is like just a two-dimensional version. But then if you have a look at the inside of the shape, you get an octagon. So we spoke a bit about octagons last week. So today we just wanted to give it a bit more depth as to octagons and what squares mean. And then there's going to be a quote, I think, from one of David Icke's books, if I've got my order right.
Right. This one here.
Did you want to read that one?
The double square. One square on top of another is more secret society symbolism. In the secret language of symbolism, one square on top of another means control of all that is right, all that is wrong, all that is just, all that is unjust, all that is positive, all that is negative. In other words, we control everything.
Yeah, so that was from David Icke's The Biggest Secret. So I've just done a red outline so you can see how the pattern was created for these police badges. So what they're saying is to these police, like these men and women who decide they want to do this as a career, they're telling them, we control you, every aspect of your life. And you're a willing slave for us. You're one of our dogs that we set on others, you know, that you do the bidding for us. But that's what they're saying. And if you have the Derbyshire constabulary, right, look, there's a checkerboard floor.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
absolutely.
Like they're just like really rubbing your face in it, right? It's just because we can't read it, you know. And then on top of that, sits the Roman crown. You know, like it's all there. So these people, you know, that we've been thinking the Bobby and that they're all here for us. No, they've got that sitting right top of their chakra, their top chakra, you know, on the top of their pineal gland, right in front of it, right? So it's there in your face, like showing you who they really are. They're people who are in base consciousness, you know, because you can see the picture right there of the guy with the bobby hat. They all got that control structure right there, you know. It's showing them that they're owned and controlled like a robot. These people are like flesh robots. That's all they are. So these people who volunteer to be the henchmen. And then you have a look at the octagonal hat. See, that's the thing, if you have a look in America about their hats. Yes. They're octagonal. So, you know, these are things that most people will never even think about. I didn't until it came across my field of vision. I was like, never cared about why the hats were shaped that way.
No, neither did I.
Everything's deliberate. It's not an accident. You know, they don't just go, oh, what kind of shape will we make this hat? Stuff round. Let's put some edges on it. You know what I mean? That's not how it works. And so that's the kind of thing I wanted to just show people what's there in plain sight, but you've got to know what it is you're looking at. And you need to be able to know how to decode it. And so once you see octagons now, right, now you're going to start looking at things a lot differently, because now I do. I'm like, what? That's an octagon. You know what I mean? Now my brain's different. And that's the kind of consciousness we need to start getting into, to know just it's in every aspect of our daily lives, like the stop sign.
I was going to say, it's interesting using it with the stop sign, isn't it?
Yeah. So what they're saying to you is like, we've got you under control at every street corner. You know?
Yeah.
That's what they're telling you. We've got you under control at every street corner. We're constantly reminding you, you know, where you cannot escape. We've got you. Every aspect of your life is under our control. That's what they're telling us. You know, and then so we're going to go into a bit of green language wordplay for the military, right? So this one, you've got to stretch out the vowels. So military, also I didn't spell it right there. I just put military. It's my light airy. And when you stretch that out, it's my light awry. So when something's gone awry, it's gone missing. So what they're saying is that the light, your internal capacity for your divine nature to express that, it's just gone. It's extinguished. It doesn't exist, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing this. You wouldn't be shooting at others. And then the word soldier, right? Soul dire. So you see it split up? Soul dire, like your soul has died. You're someone whose soul is dying. So they're mocking us with their language, telling us, if you take on this as a role, this is what's going to happen to you. And you still go ahead and do it. This is the really confronting stuff, especially if you've been in the military, guys. It's not going to be pleasant. The only thing I will say about that is, if you have been in the military, right, is ask yourself this question. If it was totally okay to do the role that you do, why do so many suffer PTSD? Because if we didn't have the capacity to care, right, we'd never have PTSD. It just wouldn't happen. And in this profession, it's one of the highest ones, right? People are hypervigilant forever after they come out of the battlefield. It never stops for them. This is not a natural way to live. This is a way to live in opposition to the way you're actually designed and created to be. You're not harmonized with nature when you're in the military. You're hypervigilant. Well, that's not harmony when you're in hypervigilance. And the sad part is that here's the real tragic bit, is that the only way that most people can get that level of trust is if their life is on the line. You've got to think about that, right? They'll only trust someone else to that level. They say, I'll die for you, brother, and all that kind of stuff. It's because their life is on the line, so they need to trust the other one. So imagine if there was a different set of conditions that were available, that we didn't need to kill each other in order to live that level of trust. That's because we're not living in line with natural law.
Yeah,
and if we did, we wouldn't require to do these things to feel that level of trust and bond and, that sort of brotherhood and all that kind of stuff. It would just be, it would just be around all of us all the time. And it's because we've been programmed without realizing it to live away from our spiritual and divine nature that things like this become appealing to some men and women.
Absolutely.
Because they crave that, right? So that's what they use. They use the very thing that we require for our capacity to live full and harmonious lives. And then they push it off to one section where you can get it, but you got to pay a pretty heavy price to get it. And then people just think that's the only way they can get that. There's no other way. So then they go, oh, well, if this is the only way I can get it, that's what I'll do. So this has got the Medal of Valor, right? So the Medal of Valor is really satanic, because you have a look, there's the goddess trapped inside the inverted pentagram. So the goddess symbolizes care, but she can't get out. She's trapped in that inverted pentagram, right? And the spirit, the soul, is pointing downwards. So it's extinguishing our divine spark. And it's got that duality, the two horns pointing up the top, and then you've got the two squares. You can see those two squares, and we just went over what that means, right? And then there's a trapezoid around the outside of that cloth. Well, that's like a pyramid with the tip cut off. That's got its own satanic meanings. So people who get this Medal of Valor are not aware of just how badly they're being mocked for what they do. And then the one in the bottom right-hand corner, that's the actual Fort Knox, where the gold is kept. Now, what's you see the shape around it?
Wow.
It's the octagon, right? So they've been telling us this whole time, right? They've got it locked down.
Yes.
The gold is locked down, right? Why do they make it an octagon?
Never seen that around Fort Knox before.
So that's that's that sort of stuff, we're not seeing. When you see the pattern of the street pattern of around Washington, D.C., it's actually a pentagram that points to the White House.
Yeah.
It's quite phenomenal. And it's missing an arm, which is called a Faustian pentagram. That's even more sinister. So that's a whole other level.
I think there is some symbology in the planning of Canberra as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there would be for sure. Most of these cities will have something that we're not seeing. So this is the second Commando unit. You can see the two squares that have just been obscured by the sword, but that's clearly two squares that have been put together. So just sort of showing people what symbols are there, just so they can see what's really been in front of them. They've not really looked at. They've just gone, oh, yeah, that's just the symbol, right? And so a lot of security companies, they've all got octagons as their symbols. So what do security companies do? They lock things down, right? They have a firm grip and control over something.
Very
Same
true.
with cage fighting, right? What happens in a cage fight? You're bashing each other's brains in. You know, that's strict control of our consciousness. And we go in there willingly, you know, what for? Smash each other out of the bits to dominate someone. Is that our divine behavior? Right? And people come and cheer that and pay for it. So, you know, who's carrying more moral guilt here? Is it the one who's in there doing it, or the ones that are coming here to make it appealing for the ones doing it? This is the dark questions, right? We've got a deep inner reflection of what we've been willing participants in. This is that real capacity to look deep inside ourselves and take responsibility for what we've been doing without realizing what we've been contributing to. And if we don't look at it, we're going to stay in the same course. And so then can you really put it on someone else? You know, if you don't want to do the work for yourself, how can you be the model of change if you don't want to do the deep reflective work?
Yeah.
You know, just because it's uncomfortable. And so this was a really important one, the dog tags, right? Because they're telling you what you are. They give you dog tags. And the thing about dog tags, I just found this out a few days ago, actually, which really helped me understand Gallipoli. So those dog tags are like chips in a casino. So when you die, they're there to be handed in and be cashed in on that CQV trust, your sister QV trust, the one they create for you. And it goes back into the Rothschild's banking system. So it keeps it afloat. So every time their system starts collapsing, they create a war, right? Because they know they need people to, you know, these people to die so they can cash in. So they can't have it. When I say they, you know, us, we don't get to use that trust anymore. They get to keep the proceeds of it and re-inject it into their fake money system. That's what the whole purpose. So then you think about Gallipoli, right? No one could work out why they sent them over there to be exposed. You know, they're shooting ducks. Even the locals going, what?
And just ran them up the beach. 2,000 people on day one, while the British sat offshore directing operations. They sent the Australians and New Zealanders in as fodder.
Hopefully this really helps explain what was really happening here. So when we celebrate Anzac Day, we have no idea what really the purpose of it was. You know, it always was uncomfortable with me. I could never work out why people celebrate it. I just couldn't. And now I understand why. Like when I found this.
Well, it's remembering. I don't think you can stop people remembering Anzac Day, or in fact dull down why they remember it. It is a day of remembrance for the sacrifice of so many people, but they didn't need to be sacrificed, and that hidden history is what we are trying to bring out. And there have been movies that did allude to what actually happened at Gallipoli particularly. And I think Gallipoli was one of them, but I don't know that it spoke strongly enough about the heinous acts that were committed by the British High Command against the Australian and New Zealand servicemen at the time.
But who sent them there, right? It was the politicians.
Oh, absolutely it was. Yep.
So this is what I'm talking about, right? This is the part we really need to look into, right? So everyone who goes into this 1901 Commonwealth Constitution as being something valid, if we actually had a proper constitution, that never would have happened. We never would have sent people to be cannon fodder. It never would happen. And so this is, you know, look, it didn't seem like it was making any sense, but it's really got to start sinking in, right? So this is what we spoke about last week. So I actually pulled up the meme so we could get it correct. So this is one of the head occultists, right? This is one of the people when we say they, this is one of them, right? Mr. Kissinger himself. He's actually used to come out and say this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Military men are just dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns in foreign policy so they can cash in.
Yep. And he believes that.
Because he was doing it and, you know, he was running it. So he doesn't, you know, he's just telling us how it is. Whether you, you know.
I think you've probably made enough people's heads spin for part one.
Yeah, I reckon.
Because I've got to say, those last 3 or 4 slides have really got my head spinning, particularly with the symbology and the how that relates to military and all that sort of thing. So if you don't mind, we might leave this one here.
For sure.
and come back, because I noticed that our next slide is back with Mr. Huxley, where we started this one. So I figured it's that halfway through, and it's a great quote. So we'll leave that one to kick off with next time round. Now, give yourself a bit of a plug. Soundbite University, how's that going?
Yeah, like I get people coming through, watching stuff. There's so much content on there. This is the issue, right? It's like, I don't know if people know where to start. So,
Yeah.
because I'm putting out so much, it's a difficult one to navigate for people. The MC 1215 chat, I think it's called MC 1215 Network Chat AU, the Telegram group. Some of the slides that will be coming in the next one we do are actually found in there. So there's going to be what's called protection tools that you can use for your protection that are going to appear in that one. So the next one we do, you'll see what that is. And then if you want to find it, you can join the Telegram chat group and they'll be in there. So that's the other thing I was going to mention. But yeah, the whole purpose of Soundbite University is that you watch it at your leisure. You choose which one, grabs your interest. I would do it by order because it's been done in that way. So your knowledge can be advanced in a particular structured order of how we do learn. But obviously it's up to you what you grab from where. It's totally a resource that, is voluntary.
All right. Well, I'm not going to make people wait for a week to get part 2 of this out. We'll sit down and get the second part out, and I will have that on the site over the next 24 hours or so. So I look forward to getting into part 2, because, as you say, there are some protection mechanisms that we're going to educate people about in the next half. So I'm looking forward to getting into that a great deal. Yeah.
So just the reason why we need to do this part is this is about how they're programmed. And now our job is to deprogram them, right? So that's what the next part is about learning how to deprogram and what you can do and what we can do as a collective to do the deprogramming. That's the critical part. But you need to know that they're being programmed first before you understand why you need to deprogram them.
Brilliant. Fitzroy Sterling, our lecturer. I was going to say our master, but that seems just like the wrong.
Yeah, it's a little bit too far-fetched.
Yeah, no, our lecturer. That's the way to do it. Our mentor, maybe. Magna Carta 1215 learning legend. That's what I'm going to stick with. Thank you once again, mate. Really appreciated your insights in this lesson, and we will put up the part 2 this week that will keep people entertained and give them some tools should they be confronted with the cops. So I'm looking forward to that show too.
All right. Yep. It's a pleasure. And I can't wait to get the next one going.
Cheers, mate.
Bye now.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!